had seeped from the wound and soaked through to the wall. Slipping silently into the night, he limped until he had suppressed the pain, then began to run, beads of perspiration evaporating from his hairless head, and the dark robe unfurling behind him like a banner. Famished, he considered raiding one of the local homes and feasting on the eggs of some low-caste colony, or perhaps on the blood of her and her mate. But he reined in his impulses to strike terror, his appetite for destruction, sinking himself instead on bats and the rotting remains of fish the waves had washed ashore. Hurrying along the black sand beach, he passed within meters of dwellings built from blocks of fossilized reef stone. But he glimpsed only one image, who, on leaving his hut naked to relieve himself, reacted as if he had seen an apparition, or else in hilarity at the figure Plagueis must have cut in robe and boots. On the cliffs high above the beach, artificial lights glimmered, announcing the homes of the elite and the proximity of the spaceport, whose ambient glow illuminated a broad area of the southern littoral. His destination close at hand, each incoming ocean wave reverberated inside him, summoning an unprecedented tide of dark energy. The knotted tendrils of time loosened, and he had a glimpse into Valdemnic's future. Embroiled in a multi-fronted war, a galactic war, in part because of its rich deposits of cortosis, but more as a pawn in a convoluted game, the subservient colony turned against those who had mastered them for eons. Lost in reverie, Plagueis almost failed to notice that a massive breakwater now followed the curve of the beach. Stone jetties jutted into a broad, calm bay, and behind the wall, a city climbed into a surround of deforested foothills. Conmi of both classes were there, but interspersed among them were off-worlders of many species, most from neighboring star systems, but some from as distant as the core. The spaceport formed the city's southernmost outskirts, made up of clusters of modular buildings, prefabricated warehouses and hangars, illuminated landing areas for cargo and passenger ships. To a being not familiar with isolated worlds, a tour through the spaceport would have seemed closer to time travel, but Plagueis felt home among the cubicle hotels, dimly lighted tap caps, and smaller cantinas where entertainment was costly and life was cheap. Raising the cowl of the robe over his head, he kept to the shadows, his height alone enough to draw attention. With security lax, he was able to circulate among the grounded vessels without difficulty. He ignored the smaller inter-system ships in favor of long-haul freighters, and even then, only those that appeared to be in good condition. Numinist was several hyperspace jumps distant, and only a ship with adequate jump capability could deliver him there without too much delay. After an hour of searching, he found one to his liking. A product of core engineering, the freighter had been half a century old, but it had been well maintained and retrofitted with modern sensor suites and subspace drives. That it bore no legend suggested that the ship's captain wasn't interested in having the ship make a name for itself. Longer than it was wide, LS-4473 had a narrow fantail, an undermount cockpit, and broad cargo bay doors which permitted it to take on large freight. With registry numbers stored in his comlink, Plagueis angled his way to the Spaceport Authority building. At that time of night, the dilapidated structure was all but deserted, save for two thick-necked Conmi guards who were sleeping. Loosening the robe sash to provide ready access to his lightsabers, Plagueis eased past them and disappeared through the main doors. Faint light from the unoccupied offices spilled into the dark corridors. On the second floor, he found the registrar's office, which overlooked the largest of the landing zones and the silent bay yard. A comp that had been an antique 20 years earlier sat atop a desk in a smaller office. Plagueis placed his comlink alongside the machine, and an instant later had sliced into the spaceport control network. A search for the freighter revealed that it did indeed go by a name, the Woebegone, out of Ord Mantell. Scheduled to launch the following morning, the ship with her crew of 8, including one droid, was bound for several worlds in the Oriel sector, carrying cargoes of fresh seaweed. According to the manifest, the cargo had already cleared customs and was housed in a refrigerated hangar awaiting transfer to the ship. The good news was that the Woebegone's ultimate destination was Ithor, on the far side of the Hydian Way. A side trip to Munilinsk, therefore, might not strike the crew as too great a detour. Plagueis called up an image of the freighter's captain, whose name was given as SL1. Opening himself fully to the Force, he studied the image for a long moment. Then, exhaling slowly, he stood, erased all evidence of his technological intrusions, and returned the comlink to his robe's inner pocket. The Woebegone had been waiting for him. Chapter 3. Woebegone. Plagueis' instincts about Woebegone were correct. The planet's rugged beauty was of a sort that appealed to the hedonistic side of human nature, and would one day draw the wealthiest of that species to bask in the warm light of its planet, tow its pristine sands, swim in its animated waters, and dine on the toothsome fish that filled its vast oceans. But in those days, humans were still relatively scarce in that part of the Outer Rim, and most visitors to Woebegone hailed from westwards or the far reaches of the Perlenian trade route. And so Captain Elan La was to and her first mate, a Zabrak named Makap. Woebegone's pilot was a Balasar, her navigator a Dracelian, and her 3 crew members, Clatuinian, Kalish, and an Aqualish of the Quara race. Near humans, all which before, where chauvinism had been raised to an art form. The only non-sentient was a bipedal multi-appendaged droid called 114D after its model number. Woebegone was but one of their planetary haunts. As often as not, he was spotted on Vestral, Sikkim 4, or Carlixis Folly. All were similar, in that Captain Ma and her shipmates rarely saw anything more of the planets than what lay within a radius of 5 kilometers from the principal spaceports, and their contact with indigenes was limited to spaceport functionaries, merchants, information brokers, and those in the pleasure professions. Theirs was a precarious business. At a time when pirates plied the intersystem trade routes, hyperspace beacons were few and far between, and a lapse in judgment could result in disaster. The cost of fuel was exorbitant. Corrupt customs officials had to be bribed, and import-export taxes were subject to change without notice. Delays meant that cargoes of foodstuffs could lose the freshness that made them desirable, or worse yet, spoil altogether. Dangers were manifold, and the earnings were meager. You had to love the work, or perhaps be on the run, from the law, yourself, or whoever else. As a consequence of having imbibed too much local grog and gambled away too many hours, and perhaps as atonement for so much carousing, concerns about the coming trip had dropped to the surface of Captain Ma's mind, like an inflatable balloon held underwater that really moved. No oversights this run, she was warning the crew in a gentle way, as they made their way across the landing zone to their waiting ship. The fact that she had used the same euphemism Blear had to minimize the impact of the near catastrophe he had caused made all of them laugh, except the Balasar, who lowered his head in mock shame, his twin antenna palps deepening in color. "We take your meaning, Captain," Makap said. "No illegal omissions. Ineradicable errors have been Commerce mistakes, Duzuto completed, his close-set inward curving glasses indeed scathing. The captain allowed them a moment of doubt. "I'm serious," she said, as they approached the Woebegones boarding them. "I'll say it again. This ship operates as a democracy. I'm your captain because knowing who's good at what is just something I have a talent for." She looked at Blear. Then at Simasali. "Do I ever question your decision about judgments?" "No, Captain," the two said, as if by law. "So I'm simply speaking as a member of what should be a competent team and not as a commander." She blew out her breath in a way that shook her trio of strong head tails. "I didn't tell you this time. Even Wandao, who had more dealings with various huts than anyone else, bemoaned the mere prospect of it. That's right, I told the tour. And don't any of you fool yourself into thinking that we can float an honest loan, because no bank worth its assets is going to accept the Woebegone as collateral. Markham and Bleer traded quick glances before the Zabrak sale. Excuse me for saying so, Captain, but you didn't seem particularly concerned about credits last night. What should you say? Barely restraining a smile. I thought you were ready to give that young thing the ship, they said, joining the team. While waved a hand in dismissal, I was just toying with him. Toy being the operative word, Markham said, since he was young enough to still play. The captain patted her hand on her lips. I can be convincing when I want to be. Oh, well you were, Zuto said, reigniting a chorus of laughter that accompanied them into the Woebegone's main cabin space, where 114D was waiting. Everything in order? The droid raised 3 of his appendages in anticipation of the salute. Shipshape, Captain. All the cargo is aboard and accounted for. You checked the thermal readout? In each day, Captain. She returned a satisfied nod. Well, the shipmates split up, each with duties to perform. Bleer and Simasali to the cockpit. Zuto, Wandao, and Pele to check that the cargo had been properly stowed. Markop and 114D to seal the ship, and Captain La to get clearance from Baldemnik Spaceport Control. Without fanfare, the ship left the warm world behind and jumped from cold ether into the netherworld of hyperspace. While still seated at the communications console when Bleer radioed her from the cockpit. We need your input on something. Since when, she said. Seriously. She headed forward and had no sooner ducked into the cockpit than Simasali indicated a flashing telltale in the ship's status display screen. A small metal plate below the telltale read, Cargo Bay 4 ambient. La flicked her forefinger against the telltale, but it continued to flash. Honey, that usually works. She studied Simasali's frown. Amazing. She sniffed and ran a hand over a hairless, deeply fissured head that mirrored the appearance of the convoluted brain it contained. Or one of the shipping containers could. Maybe during the jump, Bleer said from the pilot's chair. Okay, so we'll go check it out. She glanced from Bleer to Simasali and shook her head in ignorance. Why don't you do it? Bleer answered for the two of them. Remember the Zabrak that Mom was talking to in Argentina? La said, then added, No, I remember him. He was looking for a lift. Simasali nodded. He had been booted from his last freighter. He didn't say why. But Ma thought he smelled trouble and said we couldn't take him aboard. La followed the clues that he didn't want to know. Just a thought. Exactly. La's face grew almost as wrinkled as Simasali's. The ship would have told us if anyone had tampered with the anti-intrusion system. Unless he came in with a cargo. You mean inside one of the containers? What did he La turned to Simasali. Does Bay 4 have a vid feed? On screen, Simasali said, swiveling his chair to face the status displays. La put her palms flat on the console and leaned toward the screen while the Ducellian brought up the Finally, the remote cam found what they were looking for. Breathed by clouds of coolant, with its cargo of costly meat fins already defrosting. Spawn of them! Last started the connection of the cargo bay stunned her into slack-jawed silence. Bleer blinked repeatedly before asking, Is that what I think it is? La swallowed hard and found her voice. But it sure isn't the Zabrak. Plagueis was seated at the bottom of the ship when the hatch began to silence. Fully awake since the Woebegons jumped He had set still for the various scans the crew had run, and now lowered the hood of the lightweight and bloodied robe. When the hatch slid to, he found himself confronted by the ship's to boot a female captain, along with a muscular male survivor, a mottled Clatuinian as tall as a normal human, an aqualish of the two-eyed variety, and a scarlet-hued, scaly-skinned Kalish, whose face resembled those of the bats Plagueis had consumed on Val Demnic, and who was emitting an oleo of potent pheromones. All five carried blasters, but only the Clatuinian's was primed for fire and leveled at Plagueis. Said as she stepped into the bay, red clouds emerging with the words. Plagueis fed his hands in an innocent gesture. I confess to being a stowaway, Captain. How did you say that? Plagueis nodded. Those sea creatures make a comfortable bed. As the back slouched forward, his stiff breathing furrowed in anger. Those creatures are how we make our living new. And right now they're not worth a carking credit. Plagueis locked eyes with him. I apologize for spoiling some of your cargo. The coolant, Lars said more harshly. How did you survive that? We mutants have 3 hearts, Plagueis said, crossing one leg over the other. 2 of them are under voluntary control, so I was able to keep my blood circulating and my body temperature close to normal. Standing by the open container, the Quara said, Speaking of blood, you're leaking some. Plagueis saw that some of the sea creatures were coated with congealed blood, the result of an